The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. Suspect identified. What we know about who investigators are now looking for 6 days after the mass shooting at Brown University. Then,
we're done with junk science driven by ideological pursuits, not the well-being of children.
new guidelines and procedures for hospitals nationwide, the medical interventions that could be banned in the coming year. And then more than 100 million Americans under wind advisories already turning deadly as tens of thousands are left in the dark where this powerful winter blast is headed next. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we are expecting President Donald Trump any moment now to sign the National Defense Authorization Act into law. It passed the Senate yesterday after passing the House earlier this week. Included in the annual budget is about a 3.8% pay raise for military members, as you take a look at your screen right here, increased leave for family time, as well as more funds for childcare and schools. Additional funds are also included for border security, as well as the president's initiative to end drug trafficking into the United States. We, of course, will have more for you when President Trump signs this legislation. Holiday bonuses are now on the way for some members of the military. President Trump making that announcement in last night's address to the nation.
Military service members will receive a special, we call Warrior Dividend before Christmas, a Warrior Dividend in honor of our nation's founding in 1776.
Nearly 1.5 million U.S. military service members will receive the $1,776 Warrior Dividend check. The president says tariffs help to fund those bonuses. Also, after the president's speech last night about the state of the economy, today we received new numbers showing inflation cooled year over year from last November. But as national correspondent Matt Gelka reports, some economists are cautioning that it's still an incomplete picture.
In the first look at numbers in 3 months, inflation in the United States cooled. The Consumer Price Index slowed to 2.7% year over year, down from September's 3% number. The White House was quick to celebrate the numbers that beat economists' expectations.
And so, we're making progress, the American people are making progress, but in some places the hole that's been dug is a really deep hole and it's going to take a while to get out.
There was no data for October because of the government shutdown, and economists predicted an inflation number around 3.1%. The numbers come fresh on the heels of a speech where President Trump tried to argue to the American people that the economy was doing well under his watch and will get better in 2026.
After 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation has stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down.
Trump cited tax cuts passed earlier this year, a cheaper prescription drug program, and a $1,776 Warrior Dividend for members of the military as things to look forward to for Americans struggling with affordability. A recent poll from The Economist and YouGov showed a large number of Americans unsatisfied with Trump's handling of inflation, with 61% disapproving and only 25% of people saying the current state of the economy was excellent or good.
If we take this at face value, it's great news, but I don't think we can really take it at face value.
Bankrate financial analyst Stephen Cates is one of the many financial experts out there cautioning that the latest inflation numbers are working off of incomplete data.
We're going to need corroborating evidence in a December inflation report out in mid-January, in a January inflation report out in February, to show whether this is a trend of cooling inflation.
Now, the numbers factor into the Federal Reserve's decision to potentially cut rates again early next year, as they want to see inflation cooling off. But they'll likely pay more attention to the data coming out of December and January.
Yeah, on that point, to begin the piece, Matt, we mentioned that economists are saying that this is kind of an incomplete picture. Does the new data suggest that prices are going down?
Well, that's the important thing to remember whenever we get the inflation data. It's not that prices are necessarily decreasing. They're just not going up as fast. Now, any slowdown in price increases is good news, but the toughest challenge is getting prices to actually reverse, and economists are pretty skeptical about being able to do that once the cost has already gone up.
In Washington, Matt Gelka reporting. Thank you. Developing now, an arrest warrant has now been issued for the suspected shooter at Brown University last weekend. A 4 p.m. press conference was postponed indefinitely, and we are waiting for more details about who investigators have identified. But we have also learned law enforcement is looking into a possible connection between this mass shooting and the murder of a professor in Massachusetts. Nuno Loureiro, a physics professor at MIT, was shot in his home on Monday. His photo right here. He died from his wounds in the hospital on Tuesday. At this time, there is no known connection between the two. This is a developing story. Stay with us as we continue to track the updates throughout the evening. We'll have coverage for you both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. New tonight, former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife Christina, and their 2 children died today when a Cessna C-550 crashed in a ball of flames near the Statesville Regional Airport in North Carolina. The FAA says 7 people were on board the plane, including the pilot. At the time of the crash, there was fog and bad weather in the area, but as of right now, we do not know if that was the cause of the crash. Meantime, in Washington, D.C., the U.S. government is admitting negligence in last January's deadly mid-air collision between a passenger jet and a Black Hawk helicopter near our nation's capital. The official response states that the FAA and the Army played a role in causing the incident, which killed 67 people. It comes in response to a lawsuit filed by the family of one of the victims. The lawsuit also blames American Airlines and its regional partner, but the carriers have filed motions to dismiss the case. 5 new defendants have been named in the ongoing investigation of fraud in state-run programs in Minnesota. First, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson identified at least 14 programs in the state that are now linked to massive fraud. Attorney Thompson said, "What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes, and Minnesota has become a magnet for fraud, so much so that we have developed a fraud tourism industry, people coming to our state purely to exploit and defraud its programs." Last month, President Trump called out Minnesota Governor and former vice presidential candidate Tim Walsh for not knowing about and stopping the pervasive fraud, he said. To date, 62 people have been convicted in relation to several fraud schemes in the state. Officials say losses exceed $1 billion. The White House is moving to effectively ban transgender procedures for minors, even in states where they're still legal.
Doctors assume a solemn obligation to protect children. Yet doctors across the country now provide needless and irreversible sex-rejecting procedures that violate their sacred Hippocratic oath by endangering the very lives that they are sworn to safeguard.
The White House's proposal would block payments for doctors and Medicare and Medicaid funding for hospitals who provide things like puberty blockers and surgeries to patients under 18. It warns companies that manufacture certain products that they cannot market them to children. It also reverses the Biden-era effort to classify gender dysphoria as a disability. Officials say there's evidence sex-rejecting procedures pose medical dangers and lasting physical and psychological harm to kids. Transgender activists say psychological harm can come from not undergoing such procedures. There is a public comment period on the rules, so they won't take effect immediately.
This is very shocking, that this happened in a neighborhood that's supposed to be safe.
An illegal immigrant is accused of committing a homicide in Virginia a day after being released from jail. Fairfax County police say they arrested Marvin Morales Ortez after a man was shot and killed inside a home yesterday. According to ICE, Morales Ortez is from El Salvador and here illegally, and he's been charged with at least 7 other crimes since 2020. President Trump touting his success on an issue many believe helped propel him to the White House for a second term. Illegal immigration is once again in the spotlight in Washington, and an influx of billions of dollars means an even more aggressive strategy at the border and beyond. As the National News Desk, Christine Frizzell reports.
The issue in many ways came to define the 2024 election, with President Trump on Wednesday touting his change of course on illegal immigration.
Starting on day one, I took immediate action to stop the invasion of our southern border.
President Trump's immigration crackdown now a permanent fixture in American cities, including Chicago, where Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino has just returned. Masked federal agents making multiple arrests, often followed by protesters.
They keep asking, why are you in our community? And we always say it's to make your community a safer place.
Democratic leaders pushing back, including Evanston, Illinois Mayor Daniel Biss, who confronted Bovino, and the governor, J.B. Pritzker.
They call it enforcement, we call it harassment.
The Trump administration efforts this year, though, may just be a preview of what's to come. With $170 billion allocated in the Big Beautiful Bill to be used specifically for immigration enforcement, the approach in the new year could be much more aggressive. This new Boeing 737, just acquired by the Department of Homeland Security, will be used to facilitate cabinet travel and carry out ICE deportations. U.S. Customs and Border Protection also just revealed 5 new government contracts have been awarded for the construction of a high-tech smart wall along the border in Arizona and Texas.
It's been a challenge for a long time because it's private property and the river doesn't run in a straight line.
Senator John Cornyn says it's another tool to help the Border Patrol.
They need physical infrastructure or a wall. They need technology, and that's where the smart wall comes into play. And then they need boots on the ground.
In recent weeks, we've seen a pause on all asylum applications, an expanded travel ban, and one new major change. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announcing plans to denaturalize or strip citizenship from 100 to 200 Americans per month. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
Colin Gray, the father of Colt Gray, the accused shooter at Apalachee High School in Georgia last year, was back in court today. Colin facing nearly 30 charges, including 2 counts of second-degree murder and 19 counts of cruelty to children. Colin's attorneys want text messages sent from father to son not be a part of evidence used in the trial because they say investigators violated their client's rights and never obtained consent to search his phone. The state claims Gray not only verbally consented but signed forms as well. Colin Gray has pleaded not guilty, and his trial is set to begin on February 9th. A Boston area man is sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of his wife, who disappeared nearly 3 years ago.
That sentence is immensely appropriate and just, given your murderous acts and the life trauma that you've inflicted upon your own children.
Brian Walsh there was convicted Monday of first-degree murder in the killing of Anna Walsh. He pleaded guilty in November to misleading police and dismembering Anna's body and disposing of it in a dumpster. He claims he found her dead in bed and panicked. During the trial, prosecutors relied heavily on digital evidence, surveillance video, and DNA swabs. They say Brian may have been motivated by Anna's life insurance policy or an alleged affair. Coming up, restrictions on marijuana are easing up because of a new executive order. Why President Trump says this is a good move. Then the severe weather that's leaving a trail of destruction as it heads east. The region's at risk tonight and tomorrow. And hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fake cosmetics and drugs seized by federal agents. What exactly they found? We'll be right back in 90 seconds. Donald Trump is loosening restrictions on marijuana with an executive order to reclassify the drug from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. The president says this is not a legalization of the drug, which has been decriminalized in many states. But with the new designation, more research can be done on marijuana, especially in how it could help treat patients suffering with, for instance, chronic pain.
The facts compel the federal government to recognize that marijuana can be legitimate in terms of medical applications when carefully administered. In some cases, this may include the use as a substitute for addictive and potentially lethal opioid painkillers, and they cause tremendous problems. This can do it in a much lesser way.
President Trump is also calling on Congress to reconsider its classification of hemp-derived CBD products. A nationwide ban on certain hemp and other related products was enacted this summer in a provision in the Big Beautiful Bill. This just in, TikTok has signed a deal to sell its U.S. assets to American investors, according to the CEO. The deal is not complete, but this is a major step for the popular video sharing app's long-term future in this country. A law from last year required the U.S. version of TikTok to be sold off from its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, or be banned here in the United States. Housing costs remain a top concern for Americans, and the Trump administration is pointing the finger at illegal immigration. The National News Desk, Kelly Gaskin, spoke with Housing and Urban Development Secretary Turner and joins us now from Washington.
For a lot of families, the question is simple. Why are homes so expensive right now? A new report from the Department of Housing and Urban Development links the surge of housing costs to the surge of illegal immigration under the Biden administration. We spoke with HUD Secretary Scott Turner.
How big of an impact immigration has had on the housing supply side of this issue?
Rent prices have gone down month by month over the last 4 months. 2 million illegals have left our country. So it's no coincidence that as we check illegal immigration, that rent prices come down.
Not everyone agrees with this analysis. Harvard releasing a study saying the timing doesn't match, that the surge in home price and rent growth predates the surge in immigration. And Jenna Stauffer, a global real estate advisor at Sotheby's International, telling Fox Digital the problems we're dealing with go way beyond any one factor.
So what is your response to some of these critics saying immigration is not as big of a factor as you say it is?
Well, I disagree. I think the data shows that immigration is a huge factor in driving up cost and decreasing supply.
Meanwhile, HUD is launching a civil rights investigation into Boston's diversity-focused housing policies, which the department argues may be discriminatory.
So they put race above reality. They put race above merit and need. And our job at HUD is to enforce and uphold the Fair Housing Act.
Massachusetts governor dismissing the probe.
It's ridiculous. It's just another frivolous investigation complaint that the Trump administration has filed against a political enemy.
What's your response to that?
It's not true. Our job is to uphold the law. It has nothing to do with politics, but everything to do with principle.
During his address Wednesday night, President Trump promised Americans that in the new year, he'll unveil what he called the most aggressive housing reforms in U.S. history. Secretary Turner telling us the administration is working on a number of ideas, and the president will be the first to share the details. In Washington, I'm Kelly Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Right now, over 110 million Americans are under wind alerts. Gusts of up to 80 miles per hour, painful to even look at, impact the northern and central plains, central Rockies, and Midwest. The National Weather Service is warning of power outages, property damage, and dangerous travel. Snow on top of wind in the northern plains could cause whiteout conditions and very hazardous travel. Extreme wind in western states is already proven to be deadly. Police say a man was killed when a tree fell on his home in Idaho just yesterday. Gusts above 100 miles per hour were recorded in some areas. You can see right here some of the damage that was left on the top of that roof, it looks like, in western Montana. Meantime, in Colorado, over 100,000 customers were without power earlier today, according to poweroutage.us. Forecasters are now warning about fire danger there. The windy weather is expected to move east tomorrow. Take a look at the map here with gusts up to 60 miles per hour, likely in the northeast, along with heavy rain and snow in some areas of the U.S. New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is teeing up some help to figure out how to fund his agenda. Mamdani announced today that Sheriff Solomon will be his budget director. Solomon served several roles under former Mayor Bill de Blasio before becoming his finance commissioner. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, says Solomon is a critical part of making New York affordable again.
I think about the example of universal pre-K. OMB was critical in delivering that to New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. And we are going to ensure that OMB is understood both internally and externally as a critical part of delivering and fulfilling our affordability agenda.
One big task will be getting New York's budget in order. The Independent Budget Office reports Mamdani will have to tackle a $380 million deficit, along with multi-billion-dollar budget gaps over the next few years. Consumer alert, the FDA has expanded a nationwide recall of nasal spray due to contamination. The company Medina Terna, New Mexico, recalled Reboost nasal spray, and you see there, Clear Life Allergy nasal spray. Both products contain yeast or mold and microbial contamination, which could lead to life-threatening infections. You are urged to stop using this spray immediately and return it to the store for a refund. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, parts of Washington State are still underwater after historic flooding. The cleanup efforts that could take months. We'll have that right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America. And we start in Ohio, where federal agents seized hundreds of shipments of counterfeit drugs and cosmetics.
Since an operation launched at the end of October, Customs and Border Protection agents in Cincinnati have seized 450 shipments of fake cosmetic products.
Skincare and skin preservation is a huge industry these days.
The packages have been filled with contact lenses, weight loss drugs, Botox, dermal fillers, and skincare products, all of it totaling more than $407,000. Manufacturers of these products have to follow strict FDA guidelines.
Because you don't know how these items were produced, whether that facility was safe, whether it was hygienic, whether the FDA has visited that facility and given it any sort of approval to produce these types of items.
You really don't know until it all stops to see how much cleanup you have and to see exactly what the damage is.
The soccer fields where hundreds of players normally take the field with Snohomish United are still underwater as the region continues to deal with devastating flooding. Crews moved as much equipment as they could to higher ground, but will likely have months of cleanup and repair work ahead of them.
I don't know.
At Hidden Meadows, Mick Stocker and his family are just getting started with cleanup after water quickly overtook their wedding venue.
This building took on a foot or two, and then it did come into this building about halfway through, at least 6 inches through.
The colors of the Rainbow Crosswalk have been a part of the city's Pride District at North Main and East Evergreen Street since 2018, but this site will soon be history.
What TxDOT was requesting is an engineer to certify that the Rainbow Crosswalk aligns with the state regulations for aesthetic artwork.
The crosswalk falls into District 1. Councilwoman Sue Court tells us getting an engineer to certify the crosswalk's compliance just wasn't possible.
We were hopeful that by demonstrating that there had been no real pedestrian incidences and that the safety, it did not threaten the safety of our folks driving, that we would have been able to grant the waiver, but they came back and said no go.
Coming up next, the nation's Performing Arts Center in Washington, D.C. is being renamed. What the Kennedy Center will be called right after this. The nation's Performing Arts Center in D.C. is being renamed to the Trump Kennedy Center. Today, the White House said the Kennedy Center's Board of Trustees unanimously voted for the name change. President Trump, who appointed the board and named himself chairman this year, says he's honored by the decision. The Kennedy Center was created in 1958 under President Eisenhower. It was named after Kennedy following the late president's assassination. And that is going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. A lot of developing stories. We invite you to join us again this evening as we follow the latest on the Brown University shooting. We'll have much more for you tonight at 10. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. See you then.